Welcome to Lancefield on the Line. My name is David Lancefield, and I'm delighted and privileged to welcome Paolo Gallo, all the way from Geneva. Paolo is an executive coach, keynote speaker, and best-selling author of the book, The Compass and the Radar, The Art of Building a Rewarding Career While Remaining True to Yourself. You're also an adjunct professor at Bocconi University, which is a wonderful institution, teaching international leadership. You've also held senior HR and learning roles in the World Bank, EBRD, and the World Economic Forum. And you were also previously a banker with Citigroup. Is there anything you haven't done? You've been a coach, a corporate citizen, a senior executive, and you're a wonderful family man and a wonderful person. So very welcome, Paolo.
No, first of all, David, it's my privilege. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today. And I'm really impressed that you memorize the things I've done before, but probably the most important job that I have, I'm a dad of a 15 years old girl. She keeps me busy, and that's the most important job. And probably the most important achievement of my life, that I went to see Bruce Springsteen live at 73 4 times. And so that's probably the most relevant and remarkable achievement of my entire life.
There you go. A man of surprises. Not that we make assumptions about people, but a man who's grounded and has hobbies, if not devotions, if not obsessions, both to his family and to Bruce Springsteen. So thanks for coming on the show, Paolo. I mean, you talk there about success right at the beginning in terms of, your achievements. If you look at many executives, and perhaps myself at different stages of my life, they and I have defined myself often in success in terms of professional, sort of dimensions: money, status, role, career progression. And I guess it's what people see, right? Whether it's things you describe, the aspects of your life you promote on social media. But as I've written recently, there's big trade-offs with professional success, often, unless you're a complete star and you can do everything. And I guess the question it prompts me is, can you have it all? Or do you actually have to make trade-offs between your professional self and personal self? I'm interested in you because obviously you've worked with a lot of leaders. You've had a lot of leadership experience yourself. What's your view on that?
Is a very meaningful question, because in fact, actually, my book started from a reflection on this question, which is how do you define success in your professional life? And if you look at the conventional way is pretty much what you defined, which is the amount of promotions, money, and progression in mainly from the power/compensation standpoint. Which is understandable. I'm not saying that this is the wrong way of doing, but having been head of HR for different organizations for close to 20 years in different countries, I have the good fortune to work with a lot of people. Some of them actually, they did achieve success from that perspective. Some of them, they have not. And also by attending Davos for 5 years, I've been exposed and I've worked with the people that are, from this perspective, probably considered the most successful people on the planet. The CEO, the president, dean of university, and all the rest. But if we accept this definition of success, you fundamentally rule out 99.9% of the people on the planet, because not many people end up being a pope, being the CEO, and being the top guy or woman of whatever organization. So my book starts from this reflection to say there is something probably more meaningful than just try to win the rat race. And also because when you win the rat race, you still a rat. Okay, just to be clear, And so then to me, it's something more profound, which is, in my own interpretation, based on my experiences, is about 3 things. It's about your capacity of learning and reinventing yourself all the time. Your capacity to build trusting relationship with the people around you in your community, not only in your organization, and doing it in an ethical way, because reputation is probably the most important assets that we have in our life, second only to health and to what you have. So and therefore the title of my book, The Compass and the Radar, I wanted to put 2, let's say objects or symbols that explain this concept in order to have the radar, the capacity to have a big picture, to see the big picture over and over the sector or the function that you're currently occupying, whatever organization, no? And, you know, the fact that I work for the World Bank and European Bank, World Economic Forum, and I work in 80 plus countries, it gave me this perspective that perhaps I would have not had had I stayed in my hometown, which is Milan. The second one is the compass, which boils down to a very simple point, which is, what do you stand for? You know, what do you stand for? What are the things that you believe? And in my book, I frequently said that you need to be a missionary, not a mercenary. And a missionary, I don't mean with a religious, you know, flavor, but, you know, quoting Bruce Springsteen, a mission deep inside, something that you believe that drives your decision making and your professional choices.
Yes.
So in this book, I'm trying to reshape the idea that the professional success cannot be defined exclusively by power and money, but something more profound, which is accessible to everybody, even if you don't become a CEO.
That is very profound, but that's and I guess it takes, a sense of inner confidence and a large degree of reflection to get to that point, because we're in a world where we seek out explicitly or implicitly recognition, and it's often easy to get addicted to it, whether on social media or in your organization. And I guess part of the journey you describe is about how people can understand what's important to them, as you say, what they stand for. But how if you're somebody who, if you like, has done reasonably well, but maybe stuck, confused, not clear about where they're going in life, how do you hone? I'm not sure I'm getting the right terms here. How do you hone your both radar in terms of the big picture, but also, if you like, find your compass? Let's get practical. How do you actually do it?
Well, listen, I think it's fair to say that our professional life is a journey, no? So there is a process of growing implicit in your life, no? And we grow as individuals, as fathers, as husbands. We just shared some David, just before this conversation. Also, you're growing, okay? There are studies, and I don't enter into thousands of analytical evidence and academic framework, but that say, listen, the first part of your career, you are motivated by what they call deficiency motivators. And deficient in Latin means lack of. Yes. So fundamentally, deficient means what you want to get a good salary, corner office, and to tick some boxes in your professional journey. Then sometimes halfway through your journey, and let me use the soccer analogy, at the end of the first half, usually in your early to mid 40s or maybe late 40s, but let's say mid 40s, you start wondering if you want to play the second half the way you play the first half. Most of the time, the answer is no, not really. Why? Because you spend probably 14, 15 hours per day working. You travel like hell. Surely not the last 12 months, but you know, I travel like hell in my life. I travel an average of 150, 180 days per year for 20 years. Wow. And then, you know, you start reflecting to say, is the second half of my games going to be like a repetition of a cut and paste of the first one? Yes. And you go through a crisis there, no? So you need to have, let's say, the necessity of a midlife crisis, okay? And then when you into reflection, people have three kind of answers, no? And funny enough, rather statistically well distributed, no? A third of the people say, well, because I didn't like what I was doing before, let me do more of it. So basically, you know, it's like, because I didn't like pizza, tomorrow I'm going to have 2 pizzas, no? So because I don't like working for Citibank for 11 hours, let me go and work for JP Morgan for 15 hours, no? So this, I call it a bit jokingly the syndrome of the German soldier, that is say, okay, you put even more stamina, more resilience, more strength, you really push yourself to the limit, you may resist a little bit more, but usually this is a recipe for burnout or even worse, okay? Second answer, which is called the Peter Pan syndrome, this is my own definition, you regress to what you were 20 years earlier, and usually you end up buying a red car, a younger lover, and a very disgruntled wife that usually is going to bring you to ruins financially, emotionally. So joking beside, It's like, oh, because I don't like what I'm doing right now, let me pretend that I'm still 20 or 30 years young. No? And that's also, is almost like you're stopping your growing of individual, and you're regressing to what you used to be. And then, quite frankly, you become, to a certain extent, pathetic. The third one is to reflect and to say, hold on a second, I loved what I've done before. So you don't deny the results and the achievement you have achieved, but you move from deficiency motivators to meaning, to purpose, to something that is more profound, okay? So this is a transition, and there is a huge difference between change and transition. Change is when external circumstances change. You go from Citibank to JP Morgan, okay?
Yes.
Transition where you have changed, psychologically you have changed. So you may do the same stuff, but you have changed as an individual. When this is the case, you usually end up doing something completely different, in which the meaning is centered at the core of your life, and is not anymore the external recognition that you seeked for the first 20 years because you're motivated by deficiency motivators.
Yes.
So as a coach, I work with people in this transition, because when I went through this transition myself, it's been, quite frankly, bloody difficult, but I'm glad I've done this journey, because without that journey, I was still, let's say, probably in the German soldier syndrome, with some sporadic moment of Peter Pan.
And what do you call the third sort of route, the third journey? Is there a term used?
Is meaning. You
meaning.
Go from mod to meaning. You become a purpose seeker. You reconnect with what makes you feel happy. What the purpose in life is all about.
Yes.
Now, so many years ago, I read a quote from Mark Twain that stayed in my mind. I was a teenager. And this quote from Mark Twain said, the two most important of your life, the two most important days of your life are the day where you're born and the day where you find out why. No? And, and I remember reading this line when I was at high school, and I almost felt like from the chair to think, oh my God, I got my first day. I still have to understand what is going to be my second day, which is fundamentally try to connect with the reason why you're on this planet, which is not only about making money, accumulate power and visibility, is something much more relevant and meaningful.
That is very powerful, and it's I thought this was becoming like a biography of me for a period of time, and I can empathise with that in that journey of being the third, although happy in my previous career. It's sort of what next, and it takes time, right? Those transitions take time. It's a bit bumpy. You know, you have your really good days, and you have some moments of what have I done. But it's and you know, if anybody says to me, oh well, it's just an easy decision and it takes a few weeks or a few months, well, perhaps you haven't actually tried hard enough. It does. These transitions they do take time. But let's perhaps move on to I guess the workplace that we operate, whether it's you and I as sort of individuals or in corporations, and there's a lot spoken about it. In some ways, when I read and listen to management thinkers, executives, it sounds as though there's a bit of a consensus on certain topics, as though that everyone practices them. You know, we've got to be more experimental in our mindset. We've got to encourage more psychological safety, so people express what they think and feel without fear. That we have more autonomy at work, and the list goes on of these sort of terms. Obviously, there's a gap sometimes between the words and the ideas and principles with the action. But there is, I would argue, there's a consensus around it. As you look around, the workplaces that you either study or work with, or executives you work with, what do you think is missing from that picture, that sort of consensus picture? Or what are the aspects you think still need work?
Well, listen, the journey starts by looking inside you, now looking in your own soul, if you want. And there is a chapter in my book called The Treasure Inside You, because I believe that every person has an immense treasure to offer to the world, no? And one of the things that I've noticed by interviewing more than 8,000 people in my life, so in thousands of occasions, I spent 1 or 2 hours with total strangers to discuss about work. And quite frankly, I felt privileged that somebody was paying me to do something that I loved that so much,
Indeed.
And what is missing to me in the overall, let's say, experience that I had by interviewing thousands of people, from junior secretaries to former prime minister and Nobel Prizes, is the capacity to build a bridge between your value system and the one of the organization, okay? Let me give you an example. When I was at university, it was very cool to work in investment banking. So everybody wanted to go and work for Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, or maybe McKinsey. And it was very fashionable to go and work for this kind of organization. Right now, it's all Google, maybe the startup, or something completely different. But there's always something glittering and sparkling that you feel attracted to, and that's okay. But what is missing is the capacity to see how your value system correspond or overlap with the one of the organization where you operate, and therefore I wouldn't say that it's the perfect organization or the perfect leadership style. There are different organizations with different cultures, and you need to do a bit of homework to understand if that organization is the one that makes sense to you. And to a certain extent, without using any dangerous analogies, it's the same when you look for a partner, Which selection criteria do you use to select your partner? And what I've learned is that you need to have commonalities of vision, a sense of purpose together, some principle that you share, and then it becomes a meaningful relationship with that person. If you select this person just because she's pretty or is rich, that really doesn't work. So I'm encourage people to do a bit of homework. Let me give a practical example. Let's say that you believe in meritocracy. You say, listen, I want to work in an organization where, my results and my achievement will be recognized. Great. Then look, for example, at the company where you would love to work. Look at the people on top of this organization and try to find out how they got there.
Indeed, yes.
Now, and you work for CERN, which is an amazing, 12,000 scientists that works in Geneva. And you look at the management team, all of them are the most recognized scientists in that field on the planet. So you if you're a person doing that job, you probably think that CERN is a good place to be if you are in love with a specific branch of science. But if you look at other companies where maybe you have the guy that's been running the show for 50 years and the people around him and, nephew and nieces and son and daughters and cousins. Or people that we say in Italian, raccomandati, was people they're not really qualified, they're put there because of affiliation with somebody powerful. And if you believe that in meritocracy, and then you see the leadership team is made by this kind of individuals, then you probably there is a mismatch between expectation, your values, and what you're going to find out. So I'm not...
I like that,
Yeah, so to me, you need to be to do some homework and avoid the trap of falling in love with the brand that maybe is great, but it's not necessarily the one that corresponds to the set of values.
Yeah, you have to go if you like, underneath the surface of the organization, I guess, and work out yourself, and as you say, do some homework on what matters to yourself. I think I spend time with, both in my previous role and now, with people who are looking for new roles at different stages of their career. And I'd say they do their homework more about what the organization does, the latest cool initiative, but actually going back and saying, so what, in different stages of my life, whether, from university or apprenticeship all the way through to a senior leader, what matters to me, what really matters, what principles, facets do I expect? And then, as you just said, then look at the organization in question and say, do I see evidence or not of that? That takes skill. That's a proper exercise. It's not just preparing for the interview. It's the first stage of, is there a match? But that comes back to the question of culture of organizations. That's one facet that people look for, right? In terms of, is this a place I can be myself at work? And you said you worked in, how many countries do you say? It was 80?
83, yeah, 83. It's fun.
83. 83, that's a lot of countries. Okay. And obviously you worked in multinational organizations, as I mentioned earlier. I think that fascinates me is that on the one hand, people would want to be the best of themselves. And, whether that's the best of their experience, their background, their family background, their national culture, whatever it is. But at the same time, you do need a level of, obviously, alignment and coherence towards the strategy of the organization, the values of the organization. When you've seen the organizations you worked for at their very best, let's be positive here, at their very best, how have they, if you like, coalesced people to if you like, march in the same direction, whilst also allowing people to have enough self-expression without, if you like, becoming robots, right? Robots.
No, to me, it goes back to one comment that I made earlier, which is let's take the World Bank. The World Bank is an organization that I immensely respect, even if it's not an easy place to work, and perhaps also because I met my wife over there, I'm extremely grateful to the World Bank. You know? There are 20,000 people working there from 140 different nationalities in 140 different countries. So, you know, it's very difficult to have a cohesiveness when you have so many people coming from so many countries. The cohesiveness, the glue that hold these guys together is a purpose. Okay, it's like you can be a British guy, an Italian guy, doesn't really matter about the political, sexual preference or whatever, but you are missionary because you are joined this organization because you believe that alleviation of poverty is the mission of your life, and you do it, no? Yes. And an example, you know, when I was there, you know, one of the best days of my months was the first Tuesday of every month, in which all the newcomers came from all over the globe, including people from Washington, D.C., but also people from, let's say, Guatemala, Albania, Thailand, and Kenya. And everybody was in the same room. It could have been the former prime minister of a junior driver. Everybody was in the same room for the first week. And that was a beautiful moment. I remember entering to the room. I was the first person that they met because it was the guy in charge of HR, no? And the room was filled with a couple of hundred people every month, except Christmas in August, I remember. And everybody was wearing the best clothes, and these beautiful African women with this beautiful outfit. I mean, just it was a beautiful day. Yes. And every day, you know, I always started by asking, why you're here? And I remember that one day was literally a driver from Guatemala and the former Minister of Finance of Hungary sitting together. And both of them responded in the same way. I say, I'm here because I want to help my country to get out of poverty, okay?
Right.
And so this is to me what brings our organization together, a sense of purpose that you believe. If the sense of purpose is not there, then you need to have a discipline and control, but this discipline and control suffocates people's creativity and diversity.
Yes, yes.
And therefore you start to create a yes man or yes woman. And usually it's not fun to work in this kind of organization, even if maybe they have beautiful features and benefits.
That sense of purpose, I guess, is even more important in a world where we see potential substitution as well as complementarity in the world of, you know, artificial intelligence and other advances in technology, which, depending on your mindset, can substitute for some of the roles of people in the workplace, but also is complementary, can amplify skills too. One of your previous organizations, another World Economic Forum, has obviously published a lot on that topic. And it begs the question for me is, how optimistic are you personally about the resilience and the capacity to learn of people in general in a world where technology advances are coming through at a pace in many organizations and at a scale which could, in some ways, amplify what they're doing, but also potentially raise some difficult questions about the sustainability of roles and livelihoods and so on. How optimistic are you about that picture, about the resilience of people?
Yeah, but it depends on the person who's in front of you, of course. But,
of course.
But you know, let me start with a you know, small exercise that I do in my seminars now, which is usually quite fun. You know, halfway through my seminar, to keep people attention alive, I always play a few games. So one of them is, listen, guys, I'm going to tell you a word. You have to tell me the opposite of this word, you know. And let's start. And I start with something easy. I say, let's say dark, and people say, you know, light. And then when I say fat, skinny, rich, poor, and then I say success, and almost automatically people responded immediately by saying failure. Okay.
Yes.
The opposite of success is failure. No. In reality, if you think about failure, is a process of success. Okay. Our kids, ourselves, we couldn't walk when we were born, and we fell on the floor probably 500 times before being able to walk, okay? So failure is not the opposite of success, it's a process that gets you to success. The opposite of success is lack of learning, okay? Meaning that if you have not learned, then it's really the lack of success. And without mentioning the name of the person or even the nationality, I have a friend of mine. This guy is amazing. He has made a fortune. He became a managing partner of most amazing investment bank. And the guy got married 5 times. He's my
How
age.
many?
5, 1, 2, 3,
5
4, 5.
times. Okay.
5.
Wow.
Yeah, when he was 25, he married a girl who was 25. When he was 30, he married a girl who was 25. When he was 40, he married a girl that was 25. And recently.
Okay, there's a pattern there. Okay.
Yeah, so the first time I was his best man. The second time I just show up at the wedding, and then the third, and fourth, and fifth time just sent him a postcard. No, because to me it's just an amazing guy that is, from the financial standpoint, a genius. From a human standpoint, absolutely a disaster. He has not learned anything. So, and I use this without mentioning, of course, the company where he works and the name of the nationality. Of course. But to me, this is a fun but a meaningful example to say, listen, failure is part of the process for our learning, which is success. If we don't learn, then it's really lack of success. This is really failure.
I get
and
that.
If you think about, this COVID-19, this pandemic, the working from home, everything that's happened to our life in the last few months is an amazing opportunity of learning, not only as a citizen, but also as a professional and human being, because our life is being disrupted at so many levels. This is a moment where learning is incredibly important, not just in terms of hanging a new diploma on the wall. This is not learning, this is education. Education is what people are doing to you. Learning is what you're doing for yourself. That's a different story. So when you learn is you reflect, and the day after you start acting differently because of the learning. If you don't, you get married 5 times with the same girl.
I'll remember that story. And that learning, I guess at a more personal level has to, well, I'm not sure you can get more personal than get marriage stories, but anyway, is about being willing to genuinely make mistakes and at certain times either look or feel a bit silly. And one of the tests I have actually, when I spend time with boards or executive committees, either observing or presenting or facilitating sessions, is how many questions they ask in the session and the quality of the questions. And that's one of my concerns about aspects of technology innovation, is that there are a lot of investments being made, initiatives being launched in areas where there's often only one individual in the room who really knows what it's going to do, the potential of it. And part of it is because the others either are disinterested sometimes, but often they don't feel necessarily safe or curious enough to actually ask questions and learn enough, not to become an expert, but learn enough about advances in AI or advances or virtual reality or whatever the technology is. So that's one of my, you have an exercise, that's one of my sort of mental tests of how much talking at is happening versus how many questions are being asked. And it's interesting you talk about the pandemic. Obviously, there's been a lot of learning through that, both of the, in ourselves, our families, and our professional selves. As we come out of it, and I'm keeping that optimistic theme going in this part of the conversation, as we come out of it, and if you were spending time with your coaching clients, senior leaders, what do you think they need to be thinking about in, if you like, the next wave of development of their organization in if you like, a post-COVID world? I know every situation will be different, every context will be different, but are there any themes that you think a leader in the post-COVID world should have right front and center of their agenda?
Yeah, no, this is another very good question. And it just happened in the last 4 days, Thursday, Friday, Monday, and yesterday. I end up doing, let's say, a keynote or masterclass, whatever, with 5 different organizations in 5 different countries. No, and so I've been exposed to this quite a lot, literally in the last few days. To me, there are 2 things that comes up as a key elements that are important for people organization right now. Now, the first one is what is coming next? No? And the answer is, I don't know. Nobody knows. What I do know, that you cannot think that what is coming next can be defined as a new normal. And I have to confess that every single time I hear the terms new normal, I become slightly upset and restless. No, because normal is a Greek word, canonicos, which means standard and expected and predictable. And if you think that what is coming next is standard, predictable, and expected, you're probably trying to use the same tools that you used in the past in order to solve the problem in the future. So to me, it's not a semantic issue, okay, about calling new normal. It's really to say, no, we're not going to find normality going forward. I call it a new context, and I wrote a few articles on this front. And the new context is made by what I call the 5 C's, which is chaos, crisis, constant change, creativity, and collaboration. So you have to frame the future differently, not because you know what the future will be, but because I understand it's going to be a new normal. You need different tools to solve the new problems. The second element, leadership, is the first thing that needs to be reshaped and redesigned, because the old model of carrot and stick and command and control is not working. You need to have a completely different leadership model, which incidentally is not the one man on the top organization is pontificating to the world what they're supposed to do, but is a group of diverse people collaborating together that with care, compassion, and creativity and courage will actually shape the new context. So one of the things that, in my opinion, is going to be extremely helpful for organization to consider is to frame the future, not in terms of forecasting about GDP or exchange rates, to say, listen, we're entering a new game. What we're going to play next is a game different from the one that you played in the past. So, we love what we've done before, but going forward, you need to have instruments and mindset that are very different from the one that we used up until now. One. Second, it started from 3 things. 1, leadership. 2, redesign organization. 3, reconsider the way you work with people. And with the human capital, if you want to use one of the terms that I've used for many years. Now, if you have clarity about these 3 dimensions, then you can move the organization into a meaningful space. If you don't, it's like trying to sell gramophones or ice cream in the beach in November. Nobody's going to get them because nobody's on the beach in November.
I love those 3 aspects. And I guess if you're a leader, if you don't get those shifts in how you think, how you operate, and how you engage, the organization, you'll soon find, your role and relevance will diminish very, very quickly. And I guess the question is, if you like, if you're a leader who's, if you like, exhausted, right, which many are, completely overwhelmed, some of it real, but some of it just the whole life of it's been relentless, depending on which country you're in, relentless on many levels. I think many of them would, when they hear those three aspects, think, yeah, that makes sense, but may face a difficulty in making what we just talked about earlier, that transition. How do you, if you're somebody who says, I get those 3, but I'm tired, stressed, maybe bored, how do you make that leap? Because frankly, if you can't, somebody else will come, it could be the board, it could be your employees, investors, and so on, will come knocking on the door, and you won't last very long. How can you make that leap if you're struggling?
No, listen, this again is another very important point that you're raising, David. And let me, because I keep on giving presentations and webinar and all this kind of stuff, but recently I started the presentation by putting the picture of a Ferrari. I'm Italian, so allow me to be a bit patriotic about putting the picture.
Please do.
Ferrari, do. And I put the picture of this beautiful Ferrari, and I asked people, and I can do this little game with you right now. When I put the picture of this Ferrari, I said, what allowed this car to go up to 320 kilometers per hour? Okay. And so if I'm asking you, visualize a Ferrari in your mind, and you have this beautiful car that costs more than £1 million, and I'm asking you, which features of this car allow this car to go so fast? What would you come yes, let's say, natural for you to answer.
Well, without being a car aficionado, I'd say obviously the power of the engine, the quality of the engine, the the quality of the tires on the road, the aerodynamics of the car.
Absolutely. And, 99% of the people, actually 100% of the people responded from this perspective. Usually men respond more with an engineering angle. The engine,
I fell into that trap. Go on.
Well, women usually tend to say, oh, the team, the drivers, etc. And of course, both answers are absolutely correct. You need to have engineering works, and Ferrari is made, by the way, by 18,000 different spare parts, which is phenomenal, 18,000. And of course, you need to have a team and a driver and the road condition, the weather condition, all of them are absolutely clear. But when I ask this question, people say, oh, I got it. What actually allows this car or any car to go to 300 kilometers per hour or even 100 kilometers per hour are the brakes. No? Without brakes, you cannot accelerate. So what people in organization need to understand that if you want to accelerate, you need to use the brakes. So you need to recharge your energies. You have mental energy, physical energy, spiritual energy, and emotional energy. And right now, the one most depleted is the physical and the emotional one. We are shattered. Now, really, I found myself in tears many times the last few months when I was reading news about, the number of deaths in my hometown, in Milan, et cetera, no? So the prerequisite to be an effective leader is to say, have you recharged your energy? Because it appears that we are more concerned about recharging our phone than ourselves, okay? So we need to start by using the brakes because everybody's overwhelmed, is tired, is exhausted, and is quite frankly sad.
Yeah.
It's 1 year that we've been, detached from our normal life, okay?
Indeed.
One. Second, as a leader, and that's what I was referring early in terms of thinking about normality or new context, the game that we played in the past is not anymore sufficient for the game for the future. Let me give you a very maybe simple and stupid example. We used to be in offices where the manager kind of checked pretty much who's there, who is not, when do you show up, blah, blah. You kind of keep an eye. And, I've been head of human resources. I kept both my eyes in checking not only my team, but the organization. You kind of figure it out, who's taking a nap, who's working hard, that kind of stuff, okay? Well, that control is not any longer available to us because we work from home. Okay, so what does it mean? Or you increase the control by putting, let's say, some stupid video cameras to say, oh, I know that David has not worked between 3 and 3:15.
Sensors there, yeah.
Or you start developing trust. And trust is not the opposite of control, is a completely different game. So if I trust you, as I do, David, I don't really care if you work in your pajama, if you start working at 7 or 9, it doesn't matter because I know you will be delivering. Because last point, there's a very interesting statistics and a survey done by Manpower. They asked 50,000 people in different companies to say what is the most important things for you. And they say 2 things, purpose and flexibility.
Yes.
So give me a reason why I wake up in the morning and let me do it my own way.
Yes.
And if you give me these 2 things, as long as the rest of the conditions are fair, I can perform. Yes. So once you stop your Ferrari, once you use your brakes, you also have to say, but the game they played before didn't really work that well. So trying to insist with the old modality probably doesn't work. Even if you improve the gramophone, you're not going to sell it. Let's play something completely different. And then you start operating with trust, which is difficult to build if it wasn't there in the first place.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So the great guys becomes even better.
Yes.
The mediocre manager, they're totally lost because they are lost between Zoom, control, and this kind of stuff.
It's a lot more transparent in a way if they're not performing. The 2 things I'd perhaps add to what you were saying, if I may, one is purpose is critical, of course, but the goals of what you're working towards as a team have to be clearer. So you know what you're working towards. And I guess you need the tools. You need the support. You need the tools to actually deliver. If you're going to be flexible, good tools in lots of different forms to do that.
Sure.
Paolo, this has been a masterclass. This has been enriching, enlightening, stimulating. We've gone from 5 marriages to 83 countries to Bruce Springsteen. We'll talk about that next time. To Latin. And what I've particularly appreciated if you like, understanding the truth, the personal aspects of leadership, how people think, how they feel, because leadership is a profoundly personal set of interactions, right? And if you don't understand the psyche, the psychology of people, it doesn't work. I'm very, very grateful for your time. I look forward to our next conversation. And this was an edition of Lancefield on the Line. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.